Sage the Dragon, Episode 2, The Neighborhood. The problem with sleeping for 1,000 years is that the neighborhood sometimes changes. Sage the Dragon discovered this shortly after finishing his morning crystal tea. During the night, if one can call orbital shadow night, his meteor had drifted a few kilometers closer to the large metal structure he had observed earlier. The humans called it the International Space Station. Sage examined the telemetry with mild curiosity. The trajectories had aligned almost perfectly. In fact, the two objects were now moving through space side by side like polite neighbors drifting down an invisible river. Well, Sage said thoughtfully, that is convenient. Inside the station, the humans had noticed the same thing. Their instruments had detected the asteroid first. At first it appeared to be an ordinary rock. Then someone noticed the symmetrical crystal formations on its surface. Then someone else noticed the door. Doors on asteroids tend to attract attention. Soon several astronauts were gathered around a viewing window. Their discussion was lively. Is that architecture? Maybe it's a reflection. Rocks don't usually have hinges. They consulted protocols. They consulted mission control. Mission control, unfortunately, was currently engaged in a prolonged debate involving funding schedules, political disagreements, and the timing of the next supply launch. The astronauts had already been waiting nearly a year for their return flight. Patience was beginning to run low. Eventually one of them said what everyone was thinking. If that asteroid has a door, she said, we should probably knock. Preparations began. Spacewalk suits were checked carefully. Safety lines were secured. Cameras were activated. The astronauts floated out of the station's airlock and slowly propelled themselves across the small distance, separating their home from the mysterious rock. The asteroid's surface glittered softly with strange crystalline formations. Some of the structures looked almost like plants. Others resembled delicate sculptures. At the center of the formation stood a circular doorway, framed by intricate metallic carvings. The astronauts hovered in front of it. They exchanged glances through their helmets. Well, one of them said, this is definitely not normal. He reached out cautiously and tapped on the door. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the door opened. It did not swing outward dramatically. It simply slid aside with quiet efficiency. Warm light spilled into the vacuum. The astronauts stared. Inside the meteor lay a vaulted chamber of glowing crystal walls and polished stone floors. The air looked breathable. The gravity appeared comfortable. And seated calmly at a table in the center of the room was a dragon. The astronauts froze. The dragon looked up from teacup. He regarded them with mild curiosity. Then a voice spoke directly into their minds. It was calm, slightly amused, and carried the tone of a very patient university professor addressing a class that had arrived slightly late. The voice said, you must be the neighbors. The astronauts blinked. Their helmets transmitted no sound. The voice continued anyway. Please come inside, the dragon said gently. You look tired. The astronauts floated into the chamber. The moment they crossed the threshold, their boots settled gently onto the floor. Artificial gravity. Their training manuals had not prepared them for this. The dragon rose politely. He was large, but his movements were careful and precise. Allow me to introduce myself, the voice said within their thoughts. I am Sage. The astronauts attempted several responses simultaneously. None of them involved coherent sentences. Sage nodded sympathetically. First contact can be disorienting, he said. Dea helps. On the table sat several delicate crystal cups. A kettle hummed quietly beside them. Next to the kettle rested a plate of gingerbread cake. The aroma drifted through the room. One astronaut stared at the plate. Where did you get gingerbread in space? She asked. Sage gestured toward a small device near the wall. Food synthesizer, he explained. It converts starlight into matter. He paused. It is very convenient for baking. The astronauts sat slowly around the table. Their training screamed warnings about contamination, diplomacy, and unknown alien biology. But they had also been living on packaged rations for 11 months. The gingerbread smelled magnificent. Sage poured the tea. The liquid glowed faintly. This infusion is derived from cultivated crystals, he explained. It promotes clarity of thought. The astronauts exchanged cautious glances. Then one of them shrugged. We already walked into an asteroid to have tea with a dragon, he said. Clarity of thought would probably help. They drank. For a moment the room was silent. Then the astronauts looked at each other. Their expressions changed slightly. They seemed calmer, more focused. One of them leaned back in her chair. Okay, she said slowly. Now that I think about it, our mission delays make absolutely no logical sense. Another nodded. Yes, he said, and the supply chain arguments on Earth are mostly political theater. A third astronaut frowned thoughtfully. Also, he added, we should probably ask the dragon how his asteroid has artificial gravity. Sage smiled faintly. The tea was working. Humans were fascinating creatures. Given the right conditions, they could think quite clearly. He poured another round. Now, then, Sage said, tell me about your world. Outside the meteor, Earth turned slowly beneath them. And inside the crystal chamber, a dragon began teaching a very unusual seminar.